Friends, good afternoon. Good afternoon to everybody. And I welcome Professor Sukumar, my friend and my long acquaintance and well-wisher. In fact, friends, what is the thing that we have been witnessing in the society with regard to the education, particularly when it comes to the education of the Dalits and other socially exploited groups? There has been an enormous gap in accessing and continuing the education. Accessing is one thing, and continuing the education is another thing that we are witnessing. So, although the resources have been allocated in a uniform manner, enabling all the communities, all the students to access the resources, particularly this resource of social capital, then there is a variation in accessing it, which we have seen. Thus, as a result of it, the educational institutions which are supposed to make us, which are supposed to serve the purpose, role of, nurseries, nurturing the academic interest and the employment opportunities for the people and for the sections, they have turned into bleeding grounds. We are witnessing, we are seeing the reports every time, every day, that there is some suicide, there is some exclusion, there is some termination, some backward communities and Dalit communities. In this background, this is a good opportunity to locate the problem of higher education and the education in general among the Dalit communities. This lecture, friends, by Professor Sukumar, utilizes social dominance theory, which resonates with the idea of cultural capital, which is embedded in the caste habitus. Friends, you all know that systemic institutional group and individual discrimination drives caste-based operation in the Indian scenario. Dominant social groups and individuals are able to relegate low-paying and dangerous jobs to the members of less powerful and marginalized groups, while the plum of the job opportunities are cornered by the other sections. So, in this background, Professor Sukumar raises very interesting arguments and interesting debates covering the topic of academic outsiders, caste planning in classrooms. With this small background, Sukumar, to the participants in the forum today. Professor Sukumar teaches political science at Delhi University. His area of interest are Ambedkar and anti-caste studies, Indian politics, and Indian political thought. In fact, Professor Sukumar works revolves around social exclusion, human rights, and higher education. He led many national and international research projects on caste, higher education, and poverty. He is part of many bodies in different state and central universities across the country in different capacities. Professor Sukumar has attended and presented papers in several international and national seminars. He is a visiting fellow at Indian Institute of Dalit Studies, New Delhi, governing body member of the Indian Social Institute, New Delhi. He published, friends, 3 interesting and highly reputed, published by highly reputed publishers. That is Routledge Publishers in London, and 2 other books. He has many research articles, and also he is also part of 2 different subcommittees in the government of Karnataka State Higher Education Commission. Friends, with this vague, brief background, I invite Professor Sukumar formally to, deliver his lecture and take up the discussion of the lecture. From bottom of my heart, before he starts the lecture, I thank him for giving us the opportunity to hear his ideas and his arguments. Thank you, Professor Sukumar, and I thank you on behalf of the Research Committee 5 and also Indian Sociological Society. Thank you very much. Please start.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Muhammad Anna. I with love I call him as Anna because we have a very different kind of affiliation. So therefore, my apologies that on an academic forum I'm calling him as an Anna because it's an out of love which I am using this word. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this, Anna. And then I also thank Indian Sociological Society, through which I would be, very much, happy to share my ideas which are working for the past, many years. So today's lecture, as I already, sent or been mentioned by Professor Muhammad, which is nothing but academic outsiders Casteplanning in classrooms. Interestingly, of course, I will be focusing my talk on basically as an academic outsiders within the classroom and the university space. But over a period of time, the academic outsiders are not confined to only, the caste question. It is now in the present context of university system, where we can see that, the academic outsiders are many more. We can understand this academic untouchability or academic, outsider in different contexts when it comes to not only caste, but also the ideology, or even for that matter, the cultural, many other forms. So therefore, I just, for an anecdote, I just gave this, but my major focus is on that, who is an academic outsider and how one can understand the idea of caste that revolves around, or one can explain that how one can explain Casteplanning in academic spaces. But before my lecture, what I will do, I would go back the context, or the background. Yes, Darshan Solanki's, couple of years, institutional murder. Before that, we have, Rohit Vemula, many other, higher educational institutions, and every day. These days, suicides in universities has becoming IITs, IIMs in higher educational institutions. They're all becoming like a new normal. It's like a news headline, and who cares for all these kind of, social pressures that which certain section of the students are explaining within the higher educational institutions. So therefore, it's not only Darshan Solanki's, death, IIT Mumbai, death, where I myself is a petitioner, in the sense where, I myself with another Darshan Solanki's father, we both came and we filed an additional information to the PIL that has been filed in Supreme Court to explain or to intervene that, why this serious problem is being, so based on that only recently, the Supreme Court, of course, Indira Jaising, Rohit Vemula's mother and Payal Tadvi's mother, they both came together and they approached Indira Jaising, and Indira Jaising filed a PIL in Supreme Court. And after 2 years, 3 to 4 years of this, PIL, much recently Supreme Court has intervened, and they have constituted a committee to look into the distress and the exclusion, how the idea of dehumanized kind of, discrimination that is happening in higher educational institution. That's a very important, contemporary, development, which I would like to share. And also, much recently, Karnataka government has come out with a draft proposal of with the intervention of Rahul Gandhi, asking to frame a guidelines within the Karnataka, and also there is a request also has been filed in Telangana government that, how Rohit Vemula Act can be, brought in to address the problem of caste discrimination in higher educational institutions. So these are the much new developments that has come up. But I would like to just go back to one couple of years more back, and I just want to also highlight where in April 2023, in 55th IIT Council's meeting, the IIT Gandhinagar director was mentioning, was mentioning the reasons behind the depression among students in IITs and many other institutions. And what did they discuss? Not only in IITs, we need to discuss this in the context of universities. Even in this month beginning, there were 3 deaths in one of the IITs in Uttar Pradesh. I just, I'm not able to recollect the name immediately. So what did they discussed in this, 55th IIT Council's meeting was that how to address the problem of mental health and the willingness of the students. That is a major issue that is being grappling within the students within the higher educational institutions. And how to reduce the pressure, fear of failure or rejection among the students. Because the majority of higher educational institutions, through caste, through religious, through other forms of gender-based, there are different forms of discrimination that perpetuates, so much so that in these institutions, how to reduce this kind of psychological pressure and the fear of rejecting their work and also failing them. Therefore, the dropouts within these higher educational institutions are also being discussed. And the reasons, as I already said, the reasons for dropout, as I call, if you ask me personally, that as a person who is conducting research on this particular aspect for the many years, one can see that it can be called as not dropouts, it can be called as forced withdrawal or exclusion from the courses or from the university, from the spaces. And how to address the zero tolerance for discrimination. Of course, UGC came out, a very interesting, it diluted 2013 guidelines when Professor Thorat was the chairman, which he framed the entire guidelines to understand the idea of discrimination and exclusion. Interestingly, that has been framed, that has been mentioned in the proposed Rohit Act. It has not come out. The proposed, I have gone through the draft which has been sent it to me through some other source to understand the problem of the discrimination. So how to see that there is a zero tolerance for discrimination to tackle this, and also to tackle this, the robust grievance redressal mechanism and the psychological counsel, which is very much necessary. So with this background, I would like to contextualize my talk today. What is Casteplanning? When I said that, Casteplanning, the best example which I can give you is that in 2021 April, a teacher from IIT Kharagpur, you can go back and Google, you can note it down. In 2021 April, a professor from IIT Kharagpur who verbally abused in an online class when there was a pandemic. So this teacher goes to the online class and verbally abuses SC/ST students by taking their caste names, saying that they are not fit into the higher educational domain. So this is how you try to use caste and derogatory kind of comments which is connected towards to caste, and the Brahminical dominant language that used within the classroom by dehumanizing a particular caste or a particular background students who come from, questioning their reserved identity background, quota children background. So there are different ways, how it happens. So this is the best example. One can say that how caste is being used as a tool to humiliate a particular section of the students within the classroom. So, we have been witnessed this over a period of time. This it is on record. You can go back and you can Google it. IIT Kharagpur professor's casteist remarks in 2021. And that one can easily understand how Casteplanning that happens within the spaces. Now, therefore, it is very much essential for all of us to examine how the sense of caste and its everyday journeys in academia that happens. In fact, Bharat Rathod, who is another scholar who worked on this particular issues, and one of my, senior, researcher who is working on this, who is in Germany now. I guess he also joined because he is working on these issues. So, there are n number of, scholars who over a period of time emerged and started exploring that how this caste, operates in a very open manner, in a very subtle form, or in a manner where, many a times we don't even understand whether it is amount to discrimination or not. So, caste, how one can understand these kind of inequalities within the classroom. And this, which I have started, as I said, that, from the background of Hyderabad University, which I came from, and I know that how it happened within the Hyderabad University, and when I'm in Delhi University, and I'm experiencing, or even I felt that how academic outsider can be easily, marked through the language that the colleagues they use, and the peer group, from the students, how the peer group also experience. And in fact, how even while teaching the anti-caste literature through pedagogy and many other things, how all these things, is need to be very much necessary to understand, the idea. What I did is that I tried to bring the different, theories on social exclusion, discrimination, and social capital, many other things. I'm not going to deal much into that. I used Bourdieu's work, I used Sidanier's work, I used Amartya Sen and Hilary Silver's work, Michael Sanders' work, and Ajanta Subramaniam, and there are n number. One of my colleague, who works on these issues in the university spaces, like, Professor Joanna, whom also I am associated on different, projects. So there are many, scholars who have worked on it, and I'm continuously engaged on their theoretical formulation of their work. So what I did, it's like when I started writing this book, it was like, what kind of method that I can use? It was a very, very puzzling for me. That, should I focus on a very conventional sociological or, political science, or an interdisciplinary methods that I can use? Or should I use whatever the method suits to the objectives of my own concerns? So what I did, I kept it much more in a loose form. And while adopting, what I did, I adopted different methods over a period of time. And you don't believe that, a chapter which I was writing, the fourth chapter which I was writing, and the chapter was the social history of Indian academia. So when I was writing, so I picked up a very new interesting method that has been used by another scholar, and that is interpretative phenomenology. So I brought different kinds of methods also to explain the discrimination within higher educational institutions. I made very clear that, I'm not explaining about the chapterization of the book, but the titles which I used is a very interesting kind of thing, and which is, I'm still, though I get very critical feedback, and which is very important. So what I said, it is an unequal spaces, mapping caste discrimination in Indian universities. And of course, there are certain titles which I used was a problematic for even the reviewers also. I said, gate crashing into Gurukuls. So the reviewer said that, no, it is too harsh to use. So therefore, I need to tone down the language to make it much more academic rather than a kind of, activist kind of, language. Anyway, the purpose is very important. So therefore, while, writing this book, I asked one of the prominent sociologists that, when I was looking into Rohit Vemla's, the history of his family, and what made him to push into a vulnerable situation where he has been killed by the institutions, or one can call it as institutional murder. Otherwise, academically, one can call it as suicides, So I used his own line, which is used. My birth is my fatal accident, which I took it from his writing. And I added the subtitle, Social Semiotics of Dalit Student Suicides. So what I did is that, and also which I brought merit, the social cosmology of merit and pervasive injustices. So this is the broad, concepts which I tried to deal within this book in different chapters. So I kept my method very loosely, and also with 4 chapters when I went to this prominent sociologist and I asked him that, please suggest me some of the books or, works on suicides. The prominent sociologist said that no, there is no any work in the context of students committing suicides in higher educational institutions. So I questioned the entire discipline of sociology. After Durkheim, there is no much study happened, where everyday suicides are becoming new norm, especially in the context of, student suicides. So why is that, our academics are very exclusive in conducting, research. So therefore, I myself forced to it was an academic, force on me to come out with a particular chapter on suicide. Now I'm coming to the idea of exclusion, how one can understand the entire, knowledge, acquiring knowledge in the context of Indian society, in Indian society, knowledge producer and its disseminator is an exclusive privilege. Now, why I'm saying is that, Pandit has a right to knowledge. Pandit within, in a very Sanskritical term that, I am also a Pandit, a university Pandit, But Pandit in a sense where a Brahmin who has access to knowledge and who has exclusive privilege. And therefore, the entire social system over a period of time where the access to knowledge within these higher educational institutions has been completely taken over by the privileged, caste within the society. So therefore, the first generation of Dalits who started entering into university spaces by 1980s, not before that. Very few of them few scholars whom we know, Gopal Guru or Thorat or, Nancharaya or, some few scholars, those who doesn't fall into this category. But by 1980s, the category, what I mean to say is that the first generation of learners whose majority of the people who entered into academic spaces, that's what in that context I'm saying. So therefore, acquiring knowledge has been denied historically, and this privilege, what happened? This privilege has been constantly extended to the constitutionally extended to the marginalized groups, though it is mentioned, but at much later stage, as I said, by 1980s. But before that, even the constitutionally guaranteed right has been denied by the so-called Saraswati portals, or one can say that, the university system, where they completely denied of entry of these, particular groups. So therefore, not only marginal groups, but also, within that marginal groups, one can say lower caste, women has been kept out, but through reservations, they got into this. If at all, imagine that if reservations would have not been there, think about the plight of these marginalized groups, particularly in the context of lower caste and the women. Therefore, for the past 2 to 3 decades, the social movements in the society pressurized to implement the reservations. And can you believe that in IITs and IIMs, how the reservations has provided, or one can say that it has gate crashed. These reserved category students, they've gate crashed into this, IITs and IIMs, and they tried to encroach into the university spaces, which has been captured by the Brahminical lobby. And this has happened only through the constitutional provision and reservation. Now think about 50% of the universities are now private universities, where we are not even thinking about reservations in private, universities, or private educational institutions. Yesterday, one of the rally in Bihar, Rahul Gandhi was, his second proposal was that उस न्याय पात्र में. I'm not politically inclined to bring certain things, but I'm bringing that in the context because suddenly after the caste census, 50% of reservation cap need to be removed so that more representation towards to these kind of communities can happen in higher educational institutions. Now, thereby what happened when these people entered into these academic spaces, the dominant paradigms of knowledge production began to be challenged. So it has been challenged, academically it has been challenged because these people started acquiring knowledge, started questioning them, started questioning the pedagogy that has been taught for many decades without any kind of change. The pedagogy which is highly undemocratic pedagogy, and it is completely, exclusionary kind of, pedagogy. There was no any kind of anti-caste ideas that are being part of this pedagogy. So therefore, this paradigm shift of knowledge production happened through reservations, a first generation of scholars. And in India, so therefore, I mean, how, no, why this prevented, why this has happened? I mean, why, who prevented, I mean, why, in what context we need to understand this prevention? We need to understand this prevention in the context of the cultural capital, or what one can say is that what I'm referring here as cultural capital refers to passing on the non-material resources from one generation to other, modern to the another, so that in order to preserve power and privilege. So one generation giving in a platter to the other generation. That is a cultural, capital. If you understand, or maybe if you go back and see Professor Satish Deshpande's interaction with this one of the recent controversial person in Mumbai, can someone help me in identifying the name? I forgot. His name is, sorry, Kunal Kamra. Yeah, yes. So Satish Deshpande explains this cultural capital in such a nuanced manner. You can understand that, how caste capital is very important to understand the entire question of caste in different domains. So it's very interesting, please go back and, listen to Kunal Kamra's and Satish Deshpande's, interaction on understanding this caste. So how privilege and power is passed from one generation to generation. And I would like to give one interesting, observation that in the Rajya Sabha MP, John Britas, again, you go back and Google, I'm bringing all this information together. So John Britas, what he said in a statement in Rajya Sabha, while highlighting a judge's profile, he said that the judge has noted his profile in his web page, saying that my great-great-grandfather was a judge. My great-grandfather was a judge. My grandfather was a judge. My father was a judge. And that means one can easily understand that I am a judge, and maybe his next generation also, he will pass on this judge category towards to next generation. So therefore, this is what you pass on, the power and the privilege and the social capital which you get from one generation to other generation. So therefore, this entire educational credentials, like for example, types of knowledge expertise, who can speak very good English, who can theorize very well. I mean, like, empirical Shudras and, theoretical Brahmanas, I mean, Vivek Kumar or Gopal Guru, there are many scholars who worked on this. So therefore, I mean, how verbal skills or how aesthetic preferences, even how do you eat, how do you talk, what do you eat, and how you behave yourself within these spaces, all these things are, best examples for this kind of, understanding these things. Therefore, the dynasties in educational institutions, professor ka, it's like, the professor's father would be in one of the social media posts in Delhi University. one professor, one college professor who posted that my grandfather was a teacher in Delhi University. My father was a teacher in Delhi University. I am a teacher in Delhi University. So 100 years of legacy that has been covered. So therefore, what I would like to say, the dynasties in educational institutions are nothing but elite educational institutions. One can call them as socially, culturally elite educational institutions. You speak Oxford English, you are a good scholar. You speak normal English or, a local or a, Indianized version of, pronunciation of English, you are not up to the mark. So therefore, the institutions that creates an exclusive clubs. So you have, Oxford, club. In Indian universities also, you see that, who come from, you see Ashoka University, website, and you see that, who are the faculty, all are from either Oxford or Cambridge, they're all a club together, elite institution. Even in public institutions and IITs, you have these kind of, which creates an exclusive clubs, which confers dominance and privilege. And this, one can call it as an Oxford elite. People say that, immediately, in UPSC, or some other places where we meet or some other confidential work, you see that how professors, they discuss, oh, my son is in Cambridge. Oh, my daughter is in, Oxford, or my another son is in Australia, or my another daughter is in, Canada. So this is how you create a club so that, your dominance over these institutions will continue. So therefore, the family background, cultural, caste, educational, employment, and generalistic legacies which continues over a period of time. And this is called the social capital, cultural capital, which attains significance in Indian educational institutions. How? Therefore, these institutions, categorizes. One can see that how one can categorize these institutions and slot into two. Or, one can say within the, suppose, many a times, even faculty, when we sometimes we deliberately discuss, or sometimes it could be very, kind of, routine way of, discussing. We say that a weak student or a good student or a brilliant student, why do we categorize, and what is the ground? And in IITs, invariably, they call SC/ST students, and all SC/ST students, it is mandatory in IITs, because I was part of IIT, recently in Delhi, where the parliamentary committee invited me as a special invitee to go and explain them how caste discrimination happens in IITs also. So IITs, what they do, they ask every SC/ST student to go and be part of the preparatory classes. Though you might have got a very good rank, but it is immaterial. You have to go, sit there and learn language. And, the Senthil Kumar, who has been pushed, who has been killed in Hyderabad University, was failed in language, who cleared his entrance, to Hyderabad University, and he got into fellowship. He did his studies from Pondicherry University, and he was failed in language, where his fellowship was stopped, and he committed suicide, or he has been killed. So therefore, this kind of weak, good, brilliant kind of, categorization which do, therefore, it is important to understand the social locality of the individuals. From where do you come? What is the family background? What is the legacy? If a person who sits in a front row and speaks a very good English, and you try to understand the background of that particular student within the classroom, and as a student, when in my masters, when I sat at the back bench, frightened that, a professor will ask me a question, ask me to stand and ask and explain, about certain things. What kind of confidence, the confidence level of the students also need to be understood, the background from where these students come, and how this is affecting their performances. Why students, they don't talk in the classroom, they don't raise questions, because they might be very good in the regional medium background. They might be very good in their understanding of the problem, but there is a problem in articulating the question. So therefore, they keep quiet. They might be not knowing about the language. So therefore, they keep quiet. And how it affects the performance. So as an assessor, oh, your participation in the classroom is nil, so that, you will not get 30% of marks. Finish, 30% of marks gone. Though you know what exactly you are supposed to ask, but you are not able to perform. So performance in the classroom becomes one of the benchmark to grade. And ability to interact with the peers. How do you interact with your peers? Somebody who comes from, Delhi public school background, or maybe, Saint, Xavier's, or you can say that, Stephenian background, or Loyola, or many other, backgrounds, and, with a government college background, where, where do we, stand? How do you interact with the peers? And with, larger campus and institutional spaces, that is very important to understand. So that's where I said, the academic outsiders, I also call it as the depth of the rot. The depth of the rot is deeply embedded, so much so in higher educational spaces, that the social worth of the individual or even marginalized groups is yet to be recognized. Socially, the worthiness, because are we worthy? The question is, the teachers behave in such a way that, you are not even worthy to stand and sit in front of them. You are not even worthy to talk to them. So this social worthy of the individuals and marginalized groups is very important to understand the discrimination problem. And lack of educational opportunities, even if reservations are there, the idea of stigma comes in. Subjugation, quotas children. The moment, you come to know that you are a reserved background quota child, in IITs, in IIT Delhi, out of, 600 plus faculty and 1,000 sanctioned faculty, only 16 SC, ST faculties are there. Now, a professor on the first day asking students to introduce themselves with the rank and their name. Name itself reflects half of the caste background. And the rank itself, conveys that, where do you stand? So how these kind of, even if you get reservations, and what happened, 8 IIT directors coming together 8 years before, when government asked about, the idea of dropouts and many other things about implementation of reservations, 8 IIT directors coming together and saying that, look, we will be diluting the merit so that we will not dilute the standards of our IITs. So this is the statement on record. You go back and look into the news clippings. So even if reservations are there, there is a stigma that is attached, and there is something called, how it has been completely, there is a scope for subjugation. Oh, he is a reserved, so he is from this background. He availed reservation. Ye to government Brahmana hai. He is a damat hai, government damat hai. These kind of things. Therefore, negotiating the academic, the academic gaze within specialized, with its specialized language, culture, moors and manners is a tricky enterprise for first generation SC, ST women students. What I mean to say here is that, you need to wear a Fab India kurta if you are a faculty. If you are not wearing a Fab India kurta, that means you are not a Bengali Bhadralok. Bengali Bhadralok I am using in a context of, academic, that hierarchy which, generally operates. So this academic gaze with a specialized language, your accent, I mean to say, your culture, what do you eat? You are eating fruits. You are eating salads for your lunch. You are not eating full-fledged, rice and roti. Rice and roti is a different thing. If you are eating sprouts, if you are eating salads, if you are eating fruits. So this is how you need to develop an elite culture. And modes and manners, how do you behave? You are behaving in a very polished manner. So it's a very tricky, enterprise for first generation. Yeah, okay. So hence this is a very, if you don't know how to quickly learn these things, you cannot survive in these academic spaces. First time when I went to IIT as part of one of the committee that has been, asked me, not only this parliamentary committee, when I went to IIT to as a chairman of fact-finding committee on caste discrimination between administration and the non-teaching, When I went to cafeteria, you can't say canteen. In Hyderabad University, we have a word called canteen. We used to call it as canteen. So there you can't use name canteen. I mean, it's a cafeteria. You have to use that. So you have to differentiate yourself whether you are an IITian or an outsider. So I was an outsider. I was asking that, where is the canteen here? Oh, cafeteria. Okay, this is, somewhere this side. So when I went there, for my utter shock, I'm working as a professor in Delhi University. You can see that how a complete denial of human relations within these academic spaces. Nobody cares who are there, what they're eating, what they're doing. I mean, a complete detachment of human relations within these spaces. So how do one needs to understand this kind of, suffocative, atmosphere. So it's very suffocating for first generation learners who come into the spaces. Jokingly, I mean, if people eat more food, there will be derogatory comments. So this is what I explained in my earlier first EPW, that I mean, how even a mess worker who used to jokingly say that, "Arey bhai, bucket ka dal aap hi log khali kar raha hai." Matlab, how this kind of things happens. So it's a very suffocating, humiliating, and dehumanizing ambiences makes them to withdraw from the courses. You don't know, you don't have background of English language. You go to the classroom, a teacher will come with this much of voluminous material and say that until unless you don't read this and write this, I will not give you marks. Finish one line, next day you will find 5 dropouts. So you threaten, you psychologically, you demoralize students who come from such a background, who may be in a process of learning. All are not equal. I mean, all 5 fingers are not equal. I mean, they have different kind of ways how one might be having the grasping power, within 1 month, or maybe it will took a lot of time. I was failed in one of the paper which I was not able to perform well in my master's, in my first semester. So it took a lot of time. It takes a lot of time for us to, I mean, many who are from this generation to come and, get into this kind of system. So therefore, for these SC/ST marginalized, getting acclimatized to these campus lives takes time. Acclimatizing these within these spaces, it takes time. Sometimes 1 semester, 2 semesters. Still you will grapple, and therefore, many of them are not conversant with the discourses of sexuality. I mean, gender discourse. Okay, no, with a village background, you come directly and you see that, I mean, different cultural streams, gendered, streams, with the discourse of sexuality, gender, caste, relations, and jocular languages, and, all these kind of things. I mean, sorry, gender and caste relations, and by, how the caste privileged students will try to use certain terms, like, as I said, preppies in IITs, and even faculties for that matter, they use certain terms to identify who are these, to identify this category, and they brand them in certain way. Even if they sit for lunch, they use a code words. These are all code words which they use to identify a particular faculty or a particular student. So therefore, the earliest mode of survival for such students, what they do in the classroom, they keep your heads down. I mean, you need to survive. If you need to survive, what you have to do, don't ask questions. You keep silent. You keep your head down. And also maintaining silence, as I said, collect your degree, then attempt to lead a normal life. Don't ask anything. You will get a pass mark. You lead a normal life. Suppose if you are not able to cope up with this oppressive system, what happens? You will be dropped out. You will be forced to conditions or forced to withdraw from the courses. 16,000 SC/ST students over a period of 10 years in IITs and other higher educational institutions has been dropped out. It is a record. A minister who is in charge mentioned this on the floor of Lok Sabha. I'm not constructing data. It is on record. 16,000 SC, ST or OBC one needs to add minority students, particularly Muslim minority students, in present day context where, dropping out precisely because of the, not only caste, but ideological. Okay. So many such students were unable to cope up. Therefore, they were forced to withdraw or even kill themselves, like, Rohit Vemula, Payal Tadvi, Fatima Latif, to name few. I mean, recently, many, you have every IIT, I have the data. I don't want to give the data. For the past, 20 years, 121 suicides in IITs that has, sorry, not 20 years, it is 10 years. For the past 10 years, it is 121 deaths that has not been included recently, the 3 deaths that has happened. And one can add even the institutions like National Law Institutes now. NLIs in Delhi last year and early this year, there was, 2 suicides. Okay. Even in IIT last year, there was 2 suicides. Anyway, so number I'm not going, I have many other things. So therefore, we need to understand these acts as also a silent protest. Somebody withdrawing with a very anger is also a protest. Dying is also a protest. We need to understand this. Therefore, I am not going to explain my book in general, but what I did, I have conducted this study over a period of, I'm doing on this work. Therefore, for the past 16 years, 15 to 16 years, I'm involved in this, writing small pieces and other things. But finally, COVID helped me to write this book. I utilized COVID time properly to write this book. So therefore, if I can give you some broad, it is not 16,000, it is 19,000 dropouts between 2018 and 2023. And between 2014 to 2021, 122 students committed suicides in IITs. They are 50% are from SC, ST, OBCs. How to understand this, the data. So what I did, I tried to pick up 10 universities, 5 state universities and 5 central universities, which cuts across the country, and which it reflects the oppressive attitudes of the socially self-privileged,
communities. So what I did, I tried to explain or understand the question is what and how to map and understanding the privilegedness and who is the privileged. What is this privilegedness means? And as I already mentioned, 2013 guidelines which explain what amounts to exclusion and discrimination. It is a very clear-cut, detailed. When Professor Thorat was the chairman, it has been given in so much so detail that it has been completely detailed, diluted by the present UGC establishment. They have brought all categories into one, and there's a grievance redressal mechanism. By grievances, you cannot jumble all the grievances of all the categories. Therefore, we put a lot of pressure on them. But as you know that how the contemporary times, things are becoming more problematic for even many people like us, that even we are trying to convince that, look, government, that SC students' problems are different. Girl students' problems are different. Minority students' problems are different. Transgender students' problems are different. Even poor students who come from socially privileged background, their problems are different. OBC students' background are different. So you cannot jumble all these categories and say that, grievance redressal mechanism, which is completely, shabby kind of, policy. But anyway, so therefore, I still refer 2013 guidelines as the very, significant guidelines which they map. And I'm not going to explain what amounts any, depriving students, groups of students, basis of caste, creed, religion, language, ethnicity, gender, disability, accessing, education, and imposing, conditions on students group which are incompatible with the dignity of, human, or subjecting to the provisions of establishing to maintaining separate educational system or institutions for students or groups of students based on caste, creed, language, all these things. I'm not getting more into that. What I did is that I try to understand what constitutes discrimination in this particular book, and how through implementation of reservations, these category students, how do they experience marginality, or how they are marginalized, not only within the classroom, but I try to explain campus as a space. I like Professor Thirumal's article, the Brahminical body politics in the university space. I mean, it's a very, I refer this article, wherever I speak. So denial of necessary facilities for completion of courses, name calling, stigmatizing the identities of SC/ST students, strictly implementation of provisions of safeguards of the rights of the students who belongs to SC students. So therefore, what I did, I tried to bring all these things in the context of epistemic injustices. So this epistemic injustices, what I did, I collected 600 students' data, because the background is, when I exactly 18 years before, I presented a paper in Delhi University about after Senthil Kumar's death in a college. Everybody started laughing on me. Oh, what is this, Sukumar? You are telling about caste discrimination in times like modern times. So they were very unhappy crowd. So I felt that as a social scientist that I need to prove through data, because you need to, in social science, data speaks. So I collected 600 students samples in 10 universities, and within that 188 female respondents were there, and couple of transgender respondents were also there. I need to highlight this. And within caste, I also studied subcaste discrimination also. It is not that I have not studied subcaste discrimination doesn't prevail. It does prevail, on the lines of the caste discrimination that happens from the dominant caste. So broadly, I have studied on Viva-wise discrimination in Viva-wise. And I mean, recently, I think 3 years before, Hyderabad University conducted a very interesting, data, which I have. I don't want to again present the data. How the entrance marks and the through RTI, one of the student body got this information, entrance marks and the interview marks. How it discriminates. That happens even in institutions like many higher educational institutions, and even examination conducting exam bodies also. So Viva voice becomes a very significant where you might get first class, or you might get high rank in your written, but you will get 1 mark, 2 marks. Therefore, JNU went all the way. They went to the court and they stopped this kind of business, that making 100% as the assessment of interview. Because in interview, it's highly subjective. I mean, how do you decide merit? If I know your father is an IAS officer, or if I know your father is a minister, or if I know your father is a business magnate, or if I know that your father is a politician, or if I know that your father is a local goon, I will give you high marks. Okay, and if you doesn't belong, therefore that's what I said. If you are an academic outsider, I'll give you 1 mark, 2 marks, even if you got much. And interestingly, they will push you down so that your name will be placed only in the reserved category, not in the unreserved category. I'll finish within 5 minutes or 10 minutes if I'm not taking much more time. Anna, please let me know when I can finish.
No worries. Professor Sukumar, you can continue. Very interesting.
Should I continue?
Please continue, people. It's very interesting.
Okay. Thank you. So therefore, out of the data which I have collected, 600 students, it was 62.8% of students. They said that means 377 students. They said they did face at one level or other level discrimination when it comes to Viva, whether it is internals exams, whether it is MPhil Viva. That time there was MPhil, and even PhD level. So therefore, Viva plays a very significant role to completely segregate. And bring down your status from unreserved to reserved, where you might fall into unreserved. So you need to bring down their rank. So how do you bring down their rank? You give 2 marks. And you give, those who got high rank, you give 2 marks. So invariably their rank will go down. Then, so 162 students said no. The reason why they said no is that many of them, of course, my sample includes master's students and also, integrated students. So therefore, for them, Viva doesn't, matters. So therefore, and reasons for discrimination in Viva, many a times, being part of, a system which in my own department, it happened 12, 13 years before, as an observer status, which I had, because as mandatory to be as an observer, department asked me to be as an observer. With my own department, I said that, look, you cannot ask the percentage, or you cannot have the entire list of the candidates, all the faculty. It should be only with the head and with the observer, not with all the faculty. Much recently, I went to law department as a VC nominee in the PhD admissions. I said that, I saw that the entire list was circulated. Who is an SC, who is an ST, who is an OBC, who is an EWS, who is an unreserved. I said, what nonsense you people are doing? I said, no, you are not supposed to conduct interview like this. I said, remove all these, data. Please give back the Xerox copies of your list. I said, only the head. And I said, is there an observer? I said, even I should not have as a VC nominee. My status was there as a VC nominee. I said, it should be with the observer and it should be with the head. So therefore, the element of discrimination will be very much less, though you will come to know about the name. So I told my own department, though now I've democratized, but you need to everyday struggle for us. So I said that, why you want to even use names? You just ask serial number, ask everything. You say, oh, you are from Stephen's background. Matlab, your background gives you a overweightage before your interview. So that, your interview will go on very well. If you are from some other constituent college, okay, nobody will be serious. Somebody will be on the phone. If a reserved candidate comes, somebody will be busy on the phone. Okay, they don't even conduct as an observer. Being part of within these systems which I am speaking, with experience I am speaking. And so caste becomes a very significant factor within the discrimination factor. And the fellowships, which is a very contested. Hyderabad University came out with a very interesting, unique, and that has become a trend setter for UGC to bring out with a law, with a rule. When Hyderabad University felt that how can Rajiv Gandhi fellowship students and UGC fellowship students standard becomes equal? UGC students write exam, they clear. Rajiv Gandhi fellowship students are Maulana Azad. Now Maulana Azad fellowship has been completely removed. Okay, see how these spaces are becoming so problematic. So this Rajiv Gandhi fellowship students, then Hyderabad University came out with a very interesting idea. No. We don't want to assess on the fellowship. We will go on creating an entrance within the university system. Finish. That has become a role model for university to adopt it as a policy, and the entrance for PhD examination has come on. See how the Brahminical, mindset operates. If a first generation of a student from either Dalit background or minority background or even a gender background, they get some kind of fellowship, and you want to prevent them not to enter into the university spaces. Therefore, you create all kinds of bottlenecks, hurdles. So they will not get into PhD. So either you get JRF or either you get RGNF, you have to clear your university entrance first. So university entrance, it is in whose hands? It is in the professor's hands. So now anyway, NTA is conducting all these things. That's a different story. Then fellowships, when I asked about the question on fellowship, 402 students. It is multi-responses. So 402 students said that they feel very envy and, castigate and humiliating 298 responses. Unworthy. You say that, हाँ, वो तो, अरे किसी लड़की के साथ घूमता है, उसको कैसे फेलोशिप मिलता है? ये गाड़ी पे घूमता रहता है, उसको कैसे फेलोशिप मिलता है? ये फुकट में इनको दामाद है ये सरकार का, इसको क्यों फेलोशिप देना? So these are the things. So therefore, they become unworthy. They become envy, surprise. Oh, you got fellowship. Many a times. Hurry, how come you got? You sleep 24/7. You eat so much. You sleep. How come you cleared JRF? This is how the caste planning need to be understood. Surprise, and then happy. Some very few. 70 responses. Only 70 responses. They said that yes, we are very happy that this particular gentleman got appreciation. If I both merge that, both appreciation and happy, it was 140 responses that, in a positive manner. Rest, all negative manner. And Rohit Vemula has not been given kind of, lab space. Therefore, he moved from science to social sciences. Okay, so how forms of discrimination within the classroom or lab it happens. Again, multiple responses. Caste discrimination, 34 responses. Language-based responses. Language, if you're not fluent in language, you cannot write, you cannot speak in English. Okay, you face discrimination. Ideological. This has become much more fashion now. If you don't belong to established ideology, you are finished. Your fellowships are not signed. You have to choose a research topic according to the interest of the research committee that will sit on your topic and decide what you can do, whether it falls into the Indian knowledge system or not. If not, you push away out the whatever, the topics which comes by the student. So therefore, you discourage students. No, don't do this. What is this? Now you do something on Indian great tradition, you are most welcome. And if you do something on caste discrimination, no, you are not eligible. So caste, language, ideological, class differences are there. Appearance difference, also, discrimination that happens in the classroom. Color, gender-based discrimination that also happens. There is a data which all of you can go and download my book for free of cost. Okay, in six websites, my book is available for free of cost. Please download and read if you want. Knowledge, kisi ka baap ka jagiri nahi hai. Don't need to spend 1,000 rupees for my book. Read and, discuss and, critically give comments on my book. Then, perpetuators of discrimination in the classroom. Who perpetuates more discrimination? Of course, upper caste students, English medium students, which coincides with the forms of discrimination. Who perpetuates and forms of discrimination? There is a correlation between these two data which has upper class students, upper class girl students, or upper caste girl students, backward caste students, students belongs to subcaste of SCs. This is also there. So therefore, they are the perpetuators of discrimination. And I'll just explain one more table and I'll go to the way out. Not exactly explaining only the problems. Of course, how research scholars face discrimination is a different level. Supervisors will have their favorite students. Supervisors will give two students as one different kind of work. Two students a different kind of work. Not research work. I'm talking about other than research work, which happens within the lab, within the room, or outside, within the house of a supervisor. So you have a different caste and then different caste students, or even if a bureaucratic background student comes from a Dalit background, that's fine. But a farmer or a daily wage labor student comes from a background of Dalit. I have witnessed in my own study, there are supervisors who used to ask them to bring vegetables, go and get fetch the different kinds of house home chores. Anyway, this is how. And of course, when if it comes to the girl students, the problem of sexual harassment is much more visible. That one can see that one can witness that how it becomes very this thing. The last table which I would like to, there are many, I have used only 20% of data for my book. Still 80% of data is lying, and I'm not getting time to write another book, which I don't know, maybe in future I might come. But the interesting table which I would like to explain is that apart, SC/ST cells, how they function, and Darshan Solanki's case, when I was looking into that, I was the first one to say that, look, apart his sister, of course, those scholars who are working on these areas, they responded positively in a sense that it is a caste discrimination. Apart Darshan Solanki's sister, everybody said that, no, this is not caste discrimination. This is something to do with depression, marks, and something else academic. It is nothing to do with caste. Ultimately, the entire committee, after 1 year, they came out, a police investigation and everything. They said that it is a caste discrimination. Okay. Now, why I'm bringing this as an example is that there is a multiple various forms of discrimination by the teachers. Being a teacher, which I have witnessed, how very smartly the teachers, the evaluate or the discriminate, forms of discrimination, marking and grading. Okay, marking and grading, it amounts discrimination. Again, if one of my colleague who is retired now, I give my own experience, my own examples, what I experience. So even my colleagues, I don't care. I don't care my department also when it comes to the politics of knowledge. Okay, so language, this professor used to speak only to the students who speak only in English. Okay, so what kind of nonsense is this? Okay, see, that is language discrimination, favoring particular student. That particular student will have cultural capital. As I explained, what is cultural capital? Okay, and then ideological beliefs, denial of opportunities. Like even a colleague of mine who asked one research scholar, this research scholar came and explained to me this. I wrote this in one of the paper also, that a colleague of mine who Rajput, who asked the student when he went to write a recommendation letter. So he was very reluctant to be positive to write a recommendation letter. So after 2 minutes, then he asked, "Aapka jaat kya hai? What is your caste?" So when he said that I am also he said that I am Rajput. He said, "Arey, kyun khada hai? Baito. Why didn't you say this in the beginning?" So he wrote a very wonderful, beautiful, very recommendation letter and gives. So denial of opportunities of sending the students towards to seminars, workshops, methodology workshops, or even international seminars. Okay, recommendation letters to their career. Nothing. I still remember a professor of mine who belongs to a upper caste. Of course, I asked 2 professors, one my supervisor and another upper caste person, gave a very sensible. Being my supervisor might have been forced. Of course, he's a nice human being. He gave me a 6-line. I still have those copies. This 6-line recommendation letter for job. But another professor, an upper caste professor, a Marathi Brahmin, what he wrote, I still have that. He wrote in between 12 lines. He wrote that his skills, computer skills are good. Then he wrote 1 line to chop off my career. He wrote that Sukumar developed his language skills much more recently. Enough. That line is enough to hint that he is not fit for a job. Okay, I'm just giving you how these kind of things happens. And preferential treatment based on the social privilege, not providing reading material. Some teachers, they sit and gossip with the favorite students for hours and hours, but they will not have any time towards to students who come and stand in front of their room for hours, and they say, no, I don't have time. Please email me, write to me, and come to my visiting hours timing. Otherwise, I don't have time for everybody. And then, non-cordial working relations, gender-based discrimination, not allowing in the classroom, debates, interactions, rejection of the thesis, projects, chapters. You need to go through the history of Deepa Mohanan's case in Kerala. a wonderful case study that, is to be documented on how caste discrimination that happens in higher educational institutions. Her MPhil thesis was copied. She was kept locked in the, she didn't allow to go into the lab. She fought with governor. She fought with all kinds of, institutions to get justice. She was not allowed to submit. So such kind of, things, Deepa Mohanan's case, you just Google, you will get it, and you can read that, what kind of, struggle. I appreciate such kind of people. The politics of presence of such kind of people is very important in higher educational institutions. And then again, non-attestation of the fellowships. For my utter surprise, in some of the universities, the professors are taking the contingency amount of the research scholars for their own pocket money. In some of the universities, students express that and they very costly gifts. Every fellowship signature demands a gift from the student or from the researcher. Okay, so these are all, it's a new normal now. People know that chalta hai, it can be done. It's like that only. So to conclude, what I would like to mention is that these are all problems, and there are many things which I was not able to explain properly. But what needs to be done, and how one can understand this entire, address this entire problem is that, now there is no adequate representation within the university spaces. As I said, in IITs only 60 faculty are there. Many central universities, they're yet to fill the positions. And think about state universities, there is no recruitment at all. There are departments which are run by 1 or 2 faculty, and that too a faculty who is a very privileged background faculty. And think that, who will represent the problem of these students? Now, if there are, how many principals are there? How many vice chancellors are there? How many deans are there? How many heads are there? Okay, this is what I explained to the parliamentary committee which visited Delhi University recently. I was only one professor from the departments. We have around 120 professors of SC/STs in the departments. No one wants to go, belongs to SC/STs. No one wants to go and speak the grievances that faculties face or even students face in the university. I went and I spoke. What I did, I'm not morally boosting myself. What I meant to say is that, until unless you don't go and represent the problem, and many other people, they say, no, university is fine, absolutely great. Our VC is great, our faculty is great, our SC/ST students are not facing problems. Everything is a very, very green picture. So I told these, these SC/ST parliamentary, there were around 16 MPs who came. I said that please visit to every central university and also visit some state universities and find out that proper representation of the faculty is being there or not to represent the problem of these students. Who will take these students as students to do research? When they conduct research, when they are involved in research. So therefore, representation is a very important question. In a decision making, when it comes to decision making at a higher level, you need to have deans or heads who will be part of the decision making. If this category background teachers are not there, it's completely, one-sided. You cannot anticipate any kind of social justice to these, students or faculty for that matter. I am professor from Bangalore who fought from tooth and nail. He went to the court and he fought that, in the court, and court said that, no, it cannot be, you cannot have such kind of, discriminatory kind of behavior within the Indian Institute of Management, institutes. He fought in the court, Anyway, and then, so therefore representation question. Number 2, fundamental thing what is necessary is that we need to develop a radical empathy, not sympathy. Many a times when it comes to caste discrimination, when it comes to discrimination based on gender or many other social group identities, including religious minorities and many other things, we feel, array, no, why did this person die? No, it's very sorry state. No, this is not the thing which we need to be developed in the institutions. We need to develop an empathy, radical empathy. You need to own the problem, to understand the problem. Second thing, this can happen only through pedagogical interventions. Now, anti-caste pedagogies, there is no anti-caste pedagogies are being completely deleted, citing that it doesn't fit into the present new national educational policy, which talks about Indian knowledge system. The second thing, important thing which I would like to suggest is that how to address this problem is that, the higher institutional bodies like MHRD, AICTC, All India Technical Education Board, or even UGC for that matter, or even all kinds of, higher institutional bodies, they need to socially audit, conduct a social audit in all the universities, IITs, IIMs, NLUs, to what extent reservation is being implemented. How many teachers are there? How many complaints are recorded? How many dropouts are there? How many suicides are there? What are the problems of non-teaching, employees are facing? So this social audit of 20 years audit will help to detect where the problem is lying. Like doctor, one needs to understand the roots of the problem, the reasons for this, problem. So therefore, social auditing of this entire process of the institution need to be mapped so that, the proper policies can be made. Everything, till Supreme Court comes in, these institutions, universities are autonomous. They can make laws. They can make a lot of efforts to reduce these kind of, problems, but they don't do that. When it comes to many other things, they say, no, government intervention in our matter. These days, that autonomous status also has been lost by majority of the universities. So therefore, policies can be made, different kind of sensitization programs. You need to photo app. Now, these days, photo apps are happening. You need to conduct a workshop, gender sensitization workshop, caste sensitization workshop by the expert, and then you have to upload it into the university website. That is enough. So caste problem can be solved. Basically, the mindset need to be solved rather than, such kind of, thing. So radical empathy, social audit, and then when it comes to, representation question. So therefore, you need to fulfill and ensure that, majority of, principals are there, professors are there, deans are made, heads are made, all kinds of, things. Therefore, this 50% wall that Rahul Gandhi is repeatedly mentioning, or even India Alliance is repeatedly mentioning, need to be broken down so that sufficient representation can be happen in public institutions. So therefore, private institutions brings another important, battle in the coming days in the context of caste census. Anyway, and another important, suggestions which I would like to suggest is that the pedagogical intervention. You need to have the concepts, caste, gender, culture, or even discrimination, exclusion, basic conceptual clarity, and anti-caste, pedagogies need to be brought in. Like what? Gender question. Okay, so all these things are very important until unless if you don't bring these things into the classroom, so that at least students can, it is not that, just within by entering into the classroom, they can change their mindset. So from the beginning, from school education to higher education, you need to thorough revamp of all these kind of pedagogies. That is very much necessary. And another, couple of, important aspects, and the result of the entire, it could be academic results of our research, or Thorat committee report, or 2013 guidelines, or even studies like ours or many other young scholars who are doing right now. And within university spaces, people who are fighting for these kind of social justice issues against discrimination. And then, so what needs to be, so therefore the act, in fact, one of the question in my questionnaire is that should we have a legal remedy and what name to be given to that act? I gave Rohit Act. I gave the Act of SC/ST Atrocities Discrimination Against Discrimination Act. So different, names also which I suggested, or in general, caste discrimination, Prevention of Caste Discrimination Act. So many of students said that, Rohit Act. Some students said no, the politics, within the caste system. I do respect their opinion, but the result of these things are slowly amounting now. It is coming out. The Karnataka government has accepted and they sent the draft bill, and soon it is going to happen. Maybe it should not be a political kind of, project of one particular party. It should be welcomed by different, governments and different, maybe, one may have problem with the name, but it can be brought in a different name when it comes to the HRD or whatever it may be. The purpose need to be served. Okay. And lastly, thing what I would like to suggest is that much more research on this need to be, done. When I started working, Professor Thorat himself said that what is this, Sukumar? This is the subject of sociology, people. Why you are doing this, thing, education, discrimination. You are a political science, teacher, and do something on citizenship. So after Rohit Vemla, Professor Thorat called and said that, no, Sukumar, you please continue and it's a wonderful work. It is relevant. And what he suggested me 10 years before, working on citizenship, now I am working on citizenship after pandemic, because I have seen the precarity of pandemic and it doesn't even give basic dignity to all the individuals, particularly the people who come from the lower caste, and their citizenship is completely denied. Of course, we know that how CAA protest, has become a major, this thing. Much work is being already done on, religion, gender lines, but not on caste lines. So there is only very limited work. Therefore, what Professor Thorat suggests. But what I mean to say is that much research. Now I can see across the world, I have known scholars who approach me about some suggestions or whatever it may be. Within India, outside India, there are more than 30 students who are doing research on this. And I'm very happy that this research domain has picked up. I wish the future researchers, like young scholars, like, who are here listening to this, please, maybe you may have a different kind of, research agenda, not necessarily you have to work on this. But my only concern is that how the politics of presence, this is my last suggestion, our politics of presence within the institutions need to be visible. Then only this problem can be, easily tackled, understood. Otherwise, it will lie within the classroom discussions, seminar discussions, online portals, but nothing, much is going to happen. I stop here. Thank you, Anna, for asking me to be part of it. It's very less time, but many things I know. I'm also tired. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this discussion. We can have some discussion if any students are interested to ask any question. You already texted something. Do you think promotions of reason? I will start with you. Anyone can text the question. Otherwise, you can also ask. Feel free to ask in 4 languages. I am very inclusive. English, Hindi, Telugu, and partly Malayalam and Tamil I can understand, but I will respond only in English or Hindi. Okay, so feel free. So, sir, do you think promotion? No, wait. Do you think promotions of regional language in university and education will help in ensuring more inclusive education? Yes, of course. Because yes, I can give you best example. In China, they have Chinese. Okay, and they have, one language which they have across, the universities, and regional languages will give you more entitlement. What I mean to say, and I don't agree by one language imposition of any such thing, but as a communication, it is very important to encourage regional languages also. Maybe there are certain procedural problems or maybe no conventional problems, like though reading thesis in regional languages for the supervisors or evaluating, okay, but there is a way where you can hire people, university can hire people, and university can give assistance to the people who can't understand the language. It is very much possible. It is in Delhi University, we do that. I mean, I read Hindi scripts. After coming here, of course, there also I know Hindi. It takes time, but I also take help. So regional languages is also very important to encourage the higher education. We cannot just depend on only English. English gives, it empowers, it communicates. You can conquer the world. And imposition of Hindi is a problem. And I have 3 different positions when it comes to the language question. In JNU, some student asked me a question when I went to deliver a lecture. What is your position on language? I said, as a teacher who is teaching in Delhi University for the past 20 years, it was 5 years before, I said that I will go for regional medium background, regional language. The issue is that 70% of my students, 60 to 70% of my students are from Hindi medium. I do teach in Hindi medium. Okay. And as a South Indian, I don't agree Hindi imposition on any other regional language. Now I come to the last. As a Dalit, English empowered me. Today, if I am able to communicate in Delhi University to different students who come from different languages and how to disseminate language, English has played a very important role for me. So one needs to become multilingual, but at the same time have respect for different regional languages, which has very important role in educational system. How do you use the need of English language for oppressed? I told that see, at times, many students, you see that, students from this oppressed background, they have a passion to learn, speak in English. Even if they speak broken English, they feel very empowered. If you see their body language, when they speak, it is another matter. One may be very scared to speak. Once if they start speaking, no one can stop them. Okay, so therefore, English language is very important for the oppressed, sections, because you cannot just, confine opportunities within your region. You need to look for different, opportunities in different regions. So you need to open up the spaces. You have to go and, grab the opportunities in different spaces where you can use English language as a tool for communication, employment, and many more. Next generational upward mobility, many more.
Another question, please.
Hello, sir.
Hello, Anusha. Please tell.
Hi, sir. It's good listening to you. Yeah, so
Hi,
I
Anusha.
just wanted to ask you, see, the thing is like the area of research and research in caste system and higher education is seen as a threat currently. And mostly in technical institutes, it's seen as outdated topic. So what do you say on this thing to young scholars like me, and what is your opinion on this thing?
Thank you. Caste is not an outdated topic. For others, they call it as an outdated topic. Caste is a 24/7, 365 days matter in everybody's life, not only just in the everyday life of oppressed sections, but also the other within quotes. I am using within quotes privileged. Okay, though everybody is equal. Now, why it has become contested? The success of anti-caste research, the success of first generation researchers, the success of the people who got into this university spaces, they made caste as a visible factor to be researched, to be studied. So, for example, Center for Social Inclusion and Exclusion Studies, which Professor Thorat initiated, and now UGC is not at all happy with such things, where the mainstream sociology or anthropology or political science, where if you want to study caste, they have a problem with that. These centers has encouraged. So therefore, caste is not an ever-ending, or outdated. Why they are scared? Why the present establishment is scared? Precisely because caste exposes the Indian exclusive tradition, Indian hierarchical tradition. So it is a hypocrisy of these academic intellectuals, armchair intellectuals, Brahminic intellectuals, who are scared of debating caste is a problem. And that is how it is happening. And unfortunately, we have a political establishment which is backed by different ideological, concerns. They also talk about caste, but they don't want to encourage people who want to work on caste. Surprisingly, it's not surprisingly that, long back, 2-3 years before, MHRD itself came out with a circular for the scholars who want to avail fellowship of national overseas fellowship by the government of India, that what kind of subjects that you need to do research. So therefore, it is not only university level professors are scared about these topics. It is the entire system is scared. So it is the success of the Ambedkarite anti-caste, struggle and movement. So we need to take this struggle much more ahead. So now the caste census. See, I would like to connect it with caste census. Now the same political establishment, which is very much against the caste census, which has finally accepted to conduct caste census. So therefore, now they cannot say you can't do research on caste census. If government itself is accepting caste need to be mapped and census need to be happened, now we need to argue within the university spaces like me or any other Professor Mohammed or any other faculty who is there or any other outside in this room, that we need to argue that you people should feel ashamed that by not by saying that you cannot do research on caste when government itself is ready to conduct caste census. And I am telling you, the near future, the research is going to revolve around caste census, representation, employment, everything. I am telling, wait and see. So therefore, young researchers need not to worry about this. History repeats. Political regimes will be downfall. Academic, agenda also will be again democratized. So we need to just wait for a time, but we need to fight back. I know that as a young researcher, you may have some apprehensions, you may have limitations, I would like to say, but we need to fight for your space in the university spaces. So we would like to take over that burden. I don't want to say burden. We would like to take it as a responsibility to take this research agenda much more ahead. So no need to get panic. Caste is going to become an important research topic in another 1 decade.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Friends, shall we call it?
One last question, I think, sir. As my PhD research topic is worth studying human agency and its impact of caste system in intercaste marriages. Okay. So there is nothing called not worth studying. Avinash, see, it is your prerogative. No one can decide who is going to decide what you need to do. Even I can't say that, it is worth or not worth. But I would like to say any topic which makes you confident and which contributes to the domain of knowledge. Of course, you have mentioned intercaste marriages and caste, which is also very important, this thing. And of course, human agency, which is all closely, connected. I'm sure you might have read the work of contentious marriages and eloping couples by you might have read it, no? So there are a lot of works that is coming on intercaste marriages, so things. So it's worth, please go ahead. What is happening, Ilavarasan's case in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, later on in Nalgonda, this that murder, and it's an everyday kind of marriages and falling out of caste killings, all these things. Ambedkar himself said that this is one of the way to address the caste question. No? So it's good. You are taking the anti-caste agenda ahead. It contributes to anti-caste research. Good.
Okay, friends, in fact, I was looking at some posts in my group, in Indian Sociology group already, what, in the last minutes, what Professor Sukumar was speaking about, the resistance and the non-acceptance to the views, governing the views on casteism, anti-casteism kind of things. Somebody writes, looks very divisive worldview. Looks very divisive worldview, which is unfortunate because young minds are being polluted in the name of education across ideologies. Not young minds, whole generations have, historically, whole generations have been spoiled and they were at crossroads and, at receiving ends without proper meal and without proper clothing, proper housing, proper conditions of dignity all over. We have seen in the village. I am from a village. I have seen it, and most of you are from villages. Even if you are not from villages, you know, and it's not no more a rhetoric. What we call, that exists in the air. Even though we witness it, but it is not recorded. It is rhetoric. But even the discrimination across the caste, particularly, discrimination of the Dalit communities is not a rhetoric now. It has been well documented. So, friends, what I mean to say is that, as Professor Sukumar highlighted, as Professor Sukumar sees, there is a need of an enormous literature to be flowing into this domain. So, you have clearly, Professor Sukumar, you have very clearly explained the terms, very clearly explained the reality, and particularly, this aspect of the research. Although we are reading, we are witnessing the research covering the discrimination and social exclusion in the rural areas, but we were missing this aspect of research in the covering the academic communities, particularly students, because I have also witnessed several such examples. All my friends were around me. All my friends, almost 90% of my friends, close friends circle belong to this community. So I have witnessed it. I have realized their experiences, the value of what they are speaking. So when and also Professor Sukumar has clearly explained how the meanings are attached to the same object when you are from one particular community and when you are hailing from some other community. The meaning of the context changes, the meaning of the text changes as per your social group, as per your individual standards. So besides this, Professor Sukumar has explained the discourses of sexuality, gender, caste, languages, and also to my surprise, even I'm really shocked to know that 60,000 students from SC, ST, BC, even Muslim
19,000. Let me myself self-correct. It was 19,000. 19,000
Oh my God.
students.
So it is like a rude shock for us to know that 90,000, almost a million students
19,000.
Okay, 19,000 students from SC, ST, BC, and also minorities have dropped out from IITs. IITs are considered to be the premier institutions in the country, and government of India is pumping enormous funding into those institutions. And it is not only prestigious to study in those institutions, it is very supportive. And if these premier institutions are enrolling the students from Dalit communities and OBCs and minority communities, then they will be really coming out of the crisis, and there will be construction of the profile of social capital in the country, because which is the social capital and particularly the cultural capitals are very much required in the present context of modernization of India project, because the country needs the technical know-how, the educated youth, the contingent of educated youth who are trained and absorbed the skills. So given this particular context of IITs and eliminating the students or excluding the students from the mainstream is a really shocking thing. which Professor Sukumar is bringing out through an excellent narration. And also, I acknowledge that Professor Sukumar's studies and in-depth with case studies, and also he has it shows how participant observation, what kind of participant observation he must have adapted to bring in these realities. And also, he has a aspect of lived-in experience adding to the studies he has conducted. Friends, it's really very impressive. I'm really I think along with me, all the participants must have taken over with Professor Sukumar's lecture. Thank you, Professor Sukumar, very much, and we look forward to have you giving us more talks in this forum. And on behalf of the Indian Sociological Society, and particularly on behalf of the Indian Research Committee 5, Sociology of Education, I thank you, and I thank all the participants for participating in this country, in this lecture. I thank my mentor body, the Indian Sociological Society, and particularly Boinu, for giving us this technical support. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you all. You can reach out to through my email in case if you have any kind of research concerns. If possible, I would respond positively to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All.
Friends, you may
Yeah,
exit.
I'm signing off. Yeah.